In this video, we are deep diving. We're going even deeper into Villains Land. We are reacting to friend of the channel, The Noble Way, made a fantastic video the other day, really deep diving into Villains Land and even a possible fifth park at Walt Disney World. We're going to play the video, stop along the way, analyze it like we always do here on OG 55. Let's get it, get it. Welcome aboard, everybody, to another episode of OG 55. I got the Italiano with me today. We are reacting to The Noble Way, fantastic content creator and friend of the channel. He made a great video about the Villains Land coming to Magic Kingdom and kind of analyzing that, breaking it down, talking about a fifth park. There's a lot of stuff. We're going to break it down. But before we dive into our festivities, the Italiano, if you let everybody at home know where they could find you on social media, sir.
Absolutely. You can find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Disney George. You could also find me on Instagram under the Disney Italiano. And of course, you can find me right here on my home base at Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner with all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info.
Did you say sticky? There we go. We're officially in. We played the sticky drop. It's official. Blow the whistle. So again, this is from a friend of the channel, The Noble Way. Make sure you smash that subscribe button. He was on the channel a couple months ago with him and his wife. They do phenomenal work over there. So make sure you show a lot of love. And also when you're watching the video, smash that like button. But George, are you ready to dive into this?
Let's do it.
Here we go.
Brand new details on the upcoming Disney's Villains Land, a possible fifth park, and new hotels coming to Walt Disney World. Hello everybody and welcome. Today we are going to be going through new uncovered details about the Disney Villains Land, including the planned attractions, in-park hotels, and also recently filed permits indicate additional expansions coming soon, and a fifth park might be closer than we think. Ever since the D23 Expo, Disney Villains Land has been a hot topic of conversations, but very little is actually known about this land until now. I've been digging through a lot of information and some recently filed permits, and I'm finding out a lot of really cool information that I want to go through. About a month before D23, Disney filed the Master Stormwater Plan, which is exactly what it sounds like. It deals with all things water related when it comes to construction. It's usually the very first thing that a company will file when they start to think about doing construction in different areas. And the 407 Basin area is the area around Magic Kingdom. There are literally thousands and thousands of pages of PDFs and images and graphics and all sorts of legal speak that talk about the work that they're going to be doing in this space. Now, we haven't seen them break ground on anything as of yet, but it does look like they are thinking about expanding in these areas around Magic Kingdom. The official documentation reads, this is to upgrade development areas in the 407 Basin area of Central Florida Tourism Oversight District Master Draining System. Development of...
So the area that he's referring to is basically beyond Big Thunder, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Is about beyond Big Thunder, but also the surrounding land. Yeah, so right where like the highlighted area, that's like the basin, so to speak. And then he gets into the extra stuff, which he basically bypasses all like the black and white print and just kind of breaks it down in his terminology.
And that's the way to do it. You don't want to put people to sleep and read the whole thing. That's crazy, you know. So yeah, he does it absolutely the right way. And this is fascinating. So let's go ahead and dive in, and we'll go from there.
All sorts of legal speak that talk about the work that they're going to be doing in this space. Now, we haven't seen them break ground on anything as of yet, but it does look like they are thinking about expanding in these areas around Magic Kingdom. The official documentation reads, this is to upgrade development areas in the 407 Basin area of Central Florida Tourism Oversight District Master Draining System. Development of a concept and template for permitting future construction within the basin. So as you can imagine, this is very exciting, especially when we think about the actual spaces. We're going to dig very deeply into this information a little bit later, but I first want to start with the Disney Villains Land and what we actually know about this space and what are some of the planned attractions that are going to be coming. So first things first, we only have one piece of concept art for Disney Villains Land. You saw it, you've seen it in D23's Expo, but I want to dig very deeply into it. I've got a high resolution version of this image. And the very first thing that catches my eye is the Maleficent tower, the dragon there, that particular space, the castle that's in the
Yeah, Maleficent's castle is going to be, and he gets into this a little bit here, but this is going to be the central piece, I think, and he dives into this, but the central piece for this land. And it's, I mean, you can't get, that's perfect. I mean, that is absolutely perfect. When I think of Villains Land, it's either Maleficent's castle or Chernabog on Mount Baldy or Bald Mountain.
Mount Baldy.
Mount Baldy. I think we got a Mount Baldy out here in California, so I got the two confused. But yeah, it's either going to be the Maleficent Castle or Chernabog. You know what I'm saying? But do you like this idea of the castle being kind of a central focus?
Absolutely. And as much as I mentioned many times on the channel about Night on Mount Baldy, I'm never letting you live that down, just so you know. Night on Bald Mountain, which I thought would be really cool to have a Chernabog kind of audio animatronic at the top of the mountain, which very well they still can do, even though it's not showcased here in the piece of concept art. Everyone has to remember you can't just go by one piece of concept art that Disney gives you and say, okay, that's exactly what the land's going to look like. We really don't know what the finished product is going to look like, so they still might add it in there. But I think if they had to pick and choose, I think guests would kind of resonate the overall look of Maleficent's castle in the Forbidden Mountain.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I love it. Absolutely love it.
In the background, sort of in the top center of this graphic, this is definitely Maleficent's castle, also referred to as Forbidden Mountain. If you're familiar with the show, with the cartoon and the movies, it looks exactly like what has been portrayed in the cartoons. So it is definitely Maleficent's castle, 100%. And I'm expecting this castle to be sort of the marquee item, sort of the thing that draws your eye, just like in Pandora, the big giant floating rocks that are in the Pandora area. I think this is going to be similar to that. They will most definitely be taking advantage of sort of the trickery, the vertical trickery and horizontal trickery that they use to make things look bigger than they really are. You're familiar with that if you look at the above the Tangled restroom.
Yes, they'll absolutely will do like this forced perspective on this castle. It's not going to be a life-size castle up there in the sky. There's no way. But it doesn't have to be, though. It really doesn't. If you do that forced perspective, and within reason, you don't want a little tiny itty bitty Maleficent castle up there. But if you do that forced perspective, I think that could be something really dope looking.
The one thing that I do wish that Disney would do is kind of go off of what Universal did with Wizarding World of Harry Potter with the Hogwarts castle, with that kind of forced perspective where it looks further in the distance, but it's still a lengthy sized castle, where I feel like Disney missed the mark with the Be Our Guest.
Yeah.
So it seems like that castle they try to get it like where it's like further off in the distance, but it kind of looks like just like a miniature model.
Yeah, this thing has to be way bigger than that. Absolutely. This thing, like he mentioned, on par with like a Pandora, because Pandora's floating mountains do have some forced perspective applied to that. You need something on that kind of scale with Maleficent's castle. You can't do the Be Our Guest thing. You know what I'm saying? It has to be way bigger than that. It doesn't have to be a real, life-size castle, but it has to be bigger than,
Yeah.
Restrooms. If you look at the Beauty and the Beast sort of dining experience with the castle there, you can see that space. I'm assuming it's going to be something similar to that. I don't think it'll be a huge, enormous castle, but I do think it will make it feel like it's pretty big, and it'll be something that draws your eye. But right alongside with that, a little bit top left, a little bit, if you kind of move down to the left a little bit, you see the giant dragon there, Maleficent as the dragon, and you see this giant roller coaster there. Now, that is definitely giving me Diagon Alley vibes. That's giving me the dragon above Gringotts.
Okay, he hit the nail on the head with this. This is exactly what they're going for, at least based on the concept art. And again, we can't get too mentally married to concept art because it could be more symbolic than literal. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But if they are going to have a giant Maleficent like they're showing here, it's going to be very similar to the Gringotts thing, which I think is dope. This is one element I think is fantastic with Diagon Alley. Would you be supportive of something like this? A giant Maleficent dragon with some green flame shooting out of his mouth?
That would really be cool. I hope that's the route that Disney goes. I hope they just don't use that as like an extra kind of like part of the rendering, and then like when we get the actual real kind of schematic kind of concept art, you know, then it's like it's not there, and it's like, man, you know, Disney had the idea, but they're just kind of utilizing it just kind of as a placement, but they really should be using that for the actual land itself, because that would be really cool.
It would be really cool. Yeah, my only fear is it's put there to show that there's a Maleficent ride in that area, and not like a literal thing. I hope it's a literal thing though, and I hope Noble is right where it's similar to the Diagon Alley dragon. So we'll see, man. I think it's pretty cool, but yeah, it is a concern that it isn't actually going to be there. You know, we'll see.
Sort of the bank there, the fire breathing. It's interesting to me that they made this choice. They don't really have things like that in any of their other parks. It does feel very much Universal and Epic Universe to me, giving this sort of like energy or thing that's going to draw your attention throughout the day with sort of the fire shooting out of the dragon. I do think it will be a practical effect of fire shooting out of the dragon's mouth, similar to Gringotts, maybe on a timer. And it's interesting because if you look at Epic Universe and Dark Universe, they have that sort of burning blade tavern spinning windmill thing that's going to catch fire every once in a while.
That's cool.
Just like Gringotts and the dragon there. I think we're going to get something similar there from Maleficent. Really looks cool to me, but it does seem like they're taking a page from Universal's playbook on that one. But as far as the roller coaster itself goes, this is interesting. So they're over there on the sort of left side of the screen, the image, the roller coaster looks really kind of crazy. It looks pretty intense. I don't think it's going to end up being like a Velocicoaster experience. I think it's going to probably be more like Raging Spirits, maybe from Tokyo Sea, or maybe even.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think it's going to be a thrilling coaster, obviously, but they're not going to go crazy. At least I don't think they will, like Universal did with Velocicoaster. I haven't been on Velocicoaster, but everything I've heard of that ride, it gets faster and more crazy as it goes. I can't imagine Disney doing that in a Villain's Land, but it will be intense. It will have some intensity to it. It has to. But he's going to play the footage of this attraction over in Tokyo, and this is, I think, the perfect kind of medium balance sort of Goldilocks zone for this kind of attraction. But what say you, George? Is it going to go Velocicoaster or?
Yeah, I don't think Disney will go that far as the intensity. I feel like that's more Universal's domain.
Yeah.
I do kind of see like this hybrid kind of thing, like with Raging Spirits here at Tokyo Disney Sea, or even like maybe on the same kind of level as Hagrid's.
Okay.
Just that kind of like intensity where it's like it's intense, but it's family friendly, where a variety of people can ride it.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, Hagrid's is definitely kind of that family coaster kind of thing. I think that this could be on par with that. Absolutely. That's a great example, George.
And another Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, maybe a little bit more intense than that, but just basically you kind of see those ride cars. They almost feel like carts, if you will, like mine carts, or bigger, sort of larger, like barrels almost. And what has people talking is the potential that there's going to be two roller coasters there, because if you look at the bottom center of the screen, you can see an additional roller coaster and track there. I personally think this is probably going to be the same roller coaster that sort of weaves throughout the park. It's hard to tell because the track itself does look a little bit different than
really
the
quick,
track.
I just have to say something. Now, what he said was actually what I was questioning.
Right.
Would Disney go the distance, no pun intended, of the two attractions for this land? Could it be two roller coasters? Or do you think that this is the same in the same, but just a different location as it travels through the land?
okay, so here's my take on it, because Disney likes to put 2 attractions in new lands, right?
Right.
I think
and tomorrow did confirm there's going to be 2.
There's 2. Okay, I think 2 coasters in Villains Land is overkill. I think you want to. I think you want to have a coaster, obviously. I would also like to see some sort of dark ride component to this land. It would be kind of a waste just to have 2 coasters, in my opinion. You know what I'm saying? I mean, obviously show some love to the coaster enthusiasts, absolutely, and they are. But if those are the only 2 things you're going to have attractions wise in this land, are 2 roller coasters, I don't know. I don't think that's a good decision. You need variety, and you need some sort of dark ride in here. So I'm hoping, like what he's saying, is that it's the same ride and it kind of goes through the entire land. This looks like almost like an underground component to the attraction or something, which is kind of cool. It kind of reminds me of like Scar with the hyenas, with the Be Prepared, with the shadows and stuff.
Oh, interesting. When I saw it, it kind of reminded me of the underworld with Hades.
Interesting. Yeah, it invokes a lot. It invokes a lot of villain energy here. So you can go that way, absolutely, George. You can kind of go my way with the Scar thing. So,
but I do agree with you. I do feel like that it would be a missed opportunity to not have a dark ride, maybe like a trackless dark ride or something.
You need something else. You can't just have 2 roller coasters in there. So I tend to agree with Noble on this. I think it's probably going to be the same attraction that we're seeing here, but we'll see.
It's up in the top left-hand corner of the graphic, but I still think it's probably going to be the same, and it is 1 coaster. The ride vehicles themselves kind of look similar. It's hard to tell because it's in motion and it's kind of blurry. This is not underwater. This is sort of a cavernous area. I'm thinking like Hades or Ursula, maybe area of this particular roller coaster. And then you see sort of the waterfalls that are cascading down the cavern. So I feel like...
And I really want to emphasize that, because a lot of fans are concerned with losing the Rivers of America, losing those water features at Magic Kingdom. Magic Kingdom is a hot park. You know what I'm saying? It really is. So that is a concern, absolutely. It looks like, and again, based on the concept art, but you can't get too mentally married to this, but based on the concept art, it does look like there's a pretty significant water component to Villains Land. Okay, these are pretty significant waterfalls here. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Is it on par with the Rivers of America in terms of like sheer volume of water? No, it's not. But I'm really thankful that there is some water here, and I hope the water, these waterfalls and the water what we see in this land, make the final cut when they finally build it. Because if you're going to replace the Rivers of America, you do need water, and that also goes for the new Cars Land area as well. So yeah,
absolutely.
We'll see.
It's going to be a roller coaster that sort of starts in the mountainous areas of Maleficent's castle and those mountains there, but then also goes down into sort of a cavernous area, which is really going to be interesting to see how they pull
I'm sorry,
off.
can you pause it again real quick?
Yeah, I got you.
You can't dig.
Just reminded me.
You're familiar?
Sure, go ahead.
With Noble Way of how he's describing, like, of how he would see the roller coaster kind of starting off in the mountains and then move to the caverns and everything. We're assuming that when we see the thorns and everything, that this roller coaster is based off of Maleficent, but could this roller coaster represent multiple Disney villains?
That's interesting.
Like it starts off like in the Forbidden Mountain, and then, as you said, go into maybe the Elephant Graveyard, and then moves into the underworld. What if the roller coaster isn't just one representation of one villain? What if it's multiple?
I like that idea. I actually like that idea a lot. And I think if you do that right, you can really make that work. So you go through, Maleficent's castle. Maybe Maleficent is the finale or something, right? But you go through Be Prepared with Scar. You go through the Ursula scenes. Now, remember, Damaro said at the D23 Expo, you worded it properly. He said some phrase at the expo incorporating Scar.
Oh, he said, "Be prepared, you poor unfortunate souls."
Yes. So that was kind of a hint and a wink and a nod a little bit, right? It's possible that this attraction, like you said, maybe has a Scar component, an Ursula component, a Maleficent component, maybe even a Hades component. I like that idea a lot.
And they used about a dozen Disney villains in the TikTok little video to kind of showcase the villain. So
even the Horned King from the Black Cauldron, which surprised me. I mean, really surprised me. Now, do I think there's going to be a Horned King element in the attraction? Probably not. Horned King will probably be like some sort of meet and greet or something. But man, if they do Horned King, if they have him in this attraction in any way, that's going to blow minds. I get it. Black Cauldron was a flop in the mid 80s. I think it was 1985. It was a huge flop for Disney, but that villain is one of the best villains they've ever done. That villain is like the male version, I think, of like Maleficent, just pure evil. And it's a dope aesthetic. Oh God, Disney, please give us a Horned King on this attraction. That'd be incredible.
Here with Florida at all, you can't really dig. There's no basements in houses. In order for there to actually be an underground for Magic Kingdom, they actually had to build up. So They actually landscaped. They moved all this dirt, moved all this stuff in order to actually build an underground for Magic Kingdom. So Magic Kingdom, the park, actually sits on the second story, if you will, of the park. The first story is basically the underground, where all of the trash receptacles and employees can kind of move freely throughout the park. So it's going to be interesting to see how they pull this off. If they're going to do some sort of underground cavernous appearance type thing there with this particular roller coaster, they're going to have to build upwards, which is going to be interesting how they attack the sightlines, because if they build up, it's going to be really easy to see Villains Land from anywhere within Magic Kingdom, maybe even from the entrance or from the monorail. You're going to be able to see it because it's going to be so high up.
Is that necessarily a bad thing, though?
Well, I was actually going to talk to you about that. I'm like notorious for Sightlines because I was giving Universal a lot of crap for Super Nintendo World when you could see the giant Comcast building,
right,
in the land, and I, to be fair, I'm an equal opportunity griper when it comes to Sightlines. I give Disney a lot of crap with the convention center behind Pixar Pier, so it's not just Universal that I'm picking on. It does bother me, but all Sightlines aren't the same, though. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can see Cinderella's Castle from a lot of places within the Magic Kingdom too. I mean, it's not just exclusive to Fantasyland. I mean, I think I remember seeing it even from the People Mover, if I'm not mistaken. So that doesn't really bother me. I don't know. I mean, if you're seeing other themed elements kind of peek through, that doesn't bother me so much.
I think as long as it fits in with what the landscape of like the angle that you're looking at.
Well, yeah, and it also it's more and this is so subjective. Everyone's mileage varies. For me, the sightline stuff is more problematic when it's stuff outside the park, kind of bleeding in. So skyscrapers, motels, outside convention centers, things like that are more problematic. Seeing a castle from Tomorrowland or seeing, the Pandora Rocks from some other land, that doesn't bother me. It's like themed elements that you kind of see peek over these other lands. I'm okay with that, more or less. That's always been kind of a Disney thing. It's just when the outside comes in is a little bit, that's where I have more of the issue. So if you see Maleficent's castle from, I don't know, Big Thunder or something, I'm kind of okay with that, but again, it's all subjective. You're okay with that, or you?
Yeah, actually, I am. Yeah.
I mean, that's different to me than having like, if there was like a Disney Channel skyscraper outside the park and you saw that from within the park. Now that would bother the hell out of me. Right. But themed elements within the theme park, I'm okay with that. I'm not super nitpicky.
As long as, again, as I see it, like in that angle, like in the distance, that it's like it's drawing you in. Now, if you take, for instance, like as if they were to put Pandora smack dab right after you go through Buena Vista Street, that I have a little bit of a problem with.
Yeah, and again, it's very subjective. It's also very case by case. It's based on a lot of different things. So you kind of have to see each thing and kind of see what works and what doesn't. But for me, generally, seeing like land icons from other lands doesn't really bother me personally that much. But for Noble, it might be an issue. And that's fine. I respect that. It's just, for me personally, it's more the outside stuff that's a bigger concern. And that's not really a huge concern for Walt Disney World. It's more of an issue for us here in Anaheim, Right. Absolutely.
Cavernous effect. Now, Epic Universe has done this with How to Train Your Dragon Land. They sort of built it up. And then as you kind of go in, you can look down and there's this sort of fire drill waterscape down there, an attraction. It looks like it goes down. The roller coaster goes down in there. So they were able to pull it off. I'm sure Disney can do the same thing. But they're going to have to build up and I'm not.
That's interesting. Hold on, let me go back to this. Okay, so this is interesting. This is very similar to the concept art we're seeing for Villains Land. You see a lot of this, and Noble's right. You see a lot of this like multi-layer stuff. So you see here the water, but then there's a step up here, right? Like the land is higher than obviously than the water, but then you have like an underground, like beneath the water kind of component with the coaster. We kind of see a similar thing here with the concept art for Villains Land, where you see these multiple levels. You know, it's not just a flat land. You see, like he was saying, the caverns. You know, they go down below like this does for How to Train Your Dragon. You also see like the height with the Maleficent's castle. It's very multi-layered, and I kind of dig that actually. And this is actually one thing I like about How to Train Your Dragon Land is it does have that depth to it. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to get into like the kind of the carnival style rides that this land is mostly made of, but in terms of the dynamic, in terms of like the variety of the geography, so to speak, that is one thing I do love about How to Train Your Dragon Land.
Absolutely.
Escape down there, an attraction. It looks like it goes down. The roller coaster goes down in there. So they were able to pull it off. I'm sure Disney can do the same thing, but they're going to have to build up. And I'm not sure how they're going to pull it off with the Sightlines with Magic Kingdom, because it'll be kind of odd if you can see Villains Land from anywhere in the park. I think it'll kind of break the visage, if you will. And over on the far left of the screen, you can kind of see, if you dig in a little bit deep, you can maybe see some lights and some almost like little rings on the ground, these light up rings, and maybe some water. So this seems like it's going to be some play pads area, sort of.
Oh, Disney, why? Why Disney? Haven't we learned our lesson with play pads and lights on the ground with Epcot and stuff like that? And this is the thing. I've had a big gripe with this interactivity stuff, that Imagineering is consistently kind of insistent on having in these parks. I don't know why they do this. We see it over and over and over again where these things break. Like in Pandora, the drums. I mean, are they even around anymore in Pandora?
They was confirmed they're completely off.
See, and that's why I don't know, man. I wish they wouldn't do stuff like that. If you know that there's other elements in other parks that you've done this for recently and they've been really problematic and haven't worked, please don't go down the same route again. Now we'll see. This is concept art, and look, it could be just maybe paint on the ground, like Pandora, where it just lights up black light, you know, and that would be fine.
And especially when it comes to the villains, like I'd rather just have brickwork.
Yeah.
You know, just kind of like make it like this kind of edgy kind of feel. Like I don't need like an over, you know, like with all the like light up sidewalks and all that. It's like, I don't need any of that. Let the land speak for itself.
Right. Yeah. The play pad stuff. And again, we're all speculating here, you know, but that doesn't thrill me. I don't like the play pad element, not just with this, with anything really. It's been proven to not really work out historically.
An area you can stroll through, and it has some cool little light up things on the ground, maybe some waterscapes happening there. A little bit further back, you can also maybe see a structure, which could be part of the roller coaster, sort of front visage, if you will, but it also could potentially be restaurants areas or shopping. It's hard to tell, but I think there will be something over in that space more than just sort of the walking path. As you enter from the right side into Villains Land, you can clearly see a lot of the structures. It almost feels like a town, if you will. And the town could be sort of a spooky town outside or around Maleficent's castle area. It's hard to tell.
It almost feels kind of like a twisted version of Disneyland's Fantasyland.
Yes.
And I'm here for this. I love that. I love that sort of like, you know, when you walk underneath the castle and to your right, you see Peter Pan and to your left, you see Pinocchio, those kind of like that little village. This seems like the twisted, dark version of that.
And I hope they do that.
Yes, please.
And honestly, if you kind of look in the back with the village, you see that kind of like mansion kind of look.
Right.
Now, again,
like, are you referring to this back here?
No. Over to the right, more right there, like no center. So right there, yeah, that. So you see, like with the three towers, but it kind of looks like it's one building.
Right.
Now again, this is subjective. They could just be using that as like just for a town look. But if they wanted to go villain fashion, to me, when I first saw that concept, it kind of reminded me of DeVille Manor.
Yes, very much, very much. And the other thing too that I noticed about this, and I love that Noble kind of has this really high quality image, and he zooms in on it. A lot of these details I haven't seen yet. This is the first time I'm kind of seeing it. But look at the scale. I think it's very important here. Look at these people comparative to the rock work.
Yes,
That's impressive, dude. That is real. And then when you see the people comparative to the stuff in the back, like this rock work, and again, it's concept art, but man, they're off to a great start. Hopefully, it can come out even half as cool as what it looks like here.
Tell from the
Definitely.
architecture of those buildings what movies they could be modeled after. I couldn't really find information, so if you know what it might be modeled after, let me know. But over there is going to be shopping, potentially restaurant and dining as well. That's sort of that experience. But you can also see a water features clearly visible, sort of a water fountain there right in front, which automatically gives me sort of Gaston's Tavern area with the little sort of Beauty and the Beast type town there with the buildings and structures, and it's got LeFou out front, or Gaston and LeFou, kind of that fountain out front with the statue. It's kind of giving me those vibes, but maybe
now, is Gaston a villain that you think fits in this land? Like, obviously he's a bad guy. I mean, I'm not saying he's not. I don't know if I like him in this land because he doesn't aesthetically is kind of what I'm going at here. Like he doesn't, there's no creepy castle for him. He hung out in a big bar.
Right. So here's my thing on it. And I think if Disney utilizes this approach, and I believe it was Slimer that brought this to my attention way before they even announced this at D23 and gave us the concept art, that a lot of the villains too that was mentioned that was showcased in the TikTok video, Gaston was one of them. If you look at a lot of the villains where you have Gaston, Lady Tremaine and the stepsisters, Madame Mim,
right?
Even Cruella de Vil, those are more of like the tamer kind of villains where it's like they're bad people that you just love to hate. But then you have like the darker villains like Maleficent, Jafar, Hades, Scar, Ursula. So Chernabog. So what Slimer suggested was
Brian Roberts of Comcast. You know, those guys. I'm just kidding, Brian. I'm just kidding.
But Slimer suggested that during the day, you can have like the lighter side of the villains out. Yeah. And then as night falls, then you get into like the real like darker vibe of the villains.
And it's possible too, like, that's a great point by Slimer. And it's also very possible where this land is kind of in like sections where there's an area with like Gaston and Cruella, like the more, like you say, the more tamer kind of villains. So there's an area for where kids won't be so overly like freaked out, and then it kind of weaves into like the more intense stuff with Maleficent and Chernabog and the Horn King and all that. So that's a possibility too, but it's interesting.
Obviously a little bit darker than that. Now in the center area, sort of in the middle and over towards the right, you can also see some additional buildings. It sort of changes color a little bit there. It's a little bit lighter, a little bit more silvers and golds there versus the dark blacks and purples of the rest of the park. I think this is going to end up being sort of the dark ride attraction area as you're kind of weaving over, serpentining over to the right there in Villains Land. I think you're going to see.
You know what's interesting with this part though, right here? Give me just a second, brother. I don't know, with the trees and everything right in this little area, I'm getting Sleepy Hollow. Total.
Hollow.
Yes. Now Disney does utilize that franchise quite a bit out here in California for like Oogie Boogie Bash, stuff like that. And I think doesn't your Halloween parade have a headless horseman, or am I mistaken? In Florida? Maybe not.
That's a good question. I thought they did. I don't know if they still do, but we do have the Sleepy Hollow, like where you can get like the funnel cakes, like right by Liberty Square. Yeah. So if that ever changes, they could always move that over to here, kind of give like a sleepy, because it's funny because you're right. When you look at the trees and everything, and it's right adjacent to the village.
Right.
So it does give that. That's interesting.
Right? Interesting.
Just color a little bit there. It's a little bit lighter, a little bit more silvers and golds there versus the dark blacks and purples of the rest of the park. I think this is going to end up being sort of the dark ride attraction area as you're kind of weaving over, serpentining over to the right there in Villains Land. I think you're going to see this dark ride attraction, which is most likely going to be some sort of trackless experience like a Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway or like Remy's Ratatouille Adventure. They have announced formally there will be 2 attractions. I think it's
I'm sorry, what was that?
For a dark ride, what would you suggest for them to use?
Oh, that's tough. I mean, maybe you brought up a great concept for the coaster, right? But maybe your concept of having multiple villains in one attraction would be better suited for something like this, where you can really soak in each scene. The coaster is going to be tough because you're whizzing by so fast.
True.
But for something like that, like a dark ride, you can have a Maleficent scene. You can have a Chernobog scene. You can have just multiple villains along the way and do like a Mickey and Minnie's, but you're going through all the various Disney villains, just like the great Disney villain dark ride, basically. Or, I think that would be really, really cool. So
Can you imagine a trackless dark ride with like a dozen villain audio animatronics?
I'm telling you, man, there is so much potential with this land. They could really blow the socks off. Yes, with it. This could be a complete and total game changer. And this franchise, I've said it before and I'll say it again, is more of a money-making machine than the Universal monsters, okay? Mm-hmm. Again, I'm not poo-pooing or putting down the Universal monsters. They are iconic, okay? A huge part of pulp culture in general. But is Frankenstein and Dracula merch moving like Disney villains merch? No, it's not. I think we can all agree that the Disney villains, like I said, they're basically keeping Hot Topic afloat, okay? Yeah. The Disney villains are a billion-dollar franchise. The monsters, I just don't think they're there. Hey, look, if there's evidence that it is, by all means, I'm open to hearing it, and I'll pull back on that opinion. But I think the Disney villains are a stronger IP. This thing, if done right, and there's a huge asterisk, if done right, can really, really, I'm telling you, man, it's going to be something else, but we'll see.
Safe bet. We see the roller coaster there. I'm pretty sure that building and structure over there is going to end up being the dark ride of some kind. Those are going to be the 2. I don't think we're going to get 2 roller coasters, at least not in phase 1 of Villains Land. And we're going to talk about phase 2 in just a moment. And then the last element of the concept art, if you sort of go all the way over around the bend, what I'm kind of expecting there to be there, based on the position of where Villains Land is going to be, is likely some sort of train station stop. The train does path through there, so it goes from sort of Tiana's Bayou Frontierland area all the way back there through Villains. Probably a safe bet we're going to get a train stop there, and then it's going to then weave its way over to Storybook Circus area, and then that weaves its way all the way back to the front of the park where Main Street is and that particular stop. That's the overall layout from the concept art that I'm getting and the attractions that we're expecting in that space. But now I want to talk about the permits and additional things that we found that indicate we might be getting some expansions like in Villains Phase 2 and some potential other things that I think are really cool. So this graphic that I'm showing on the screen right now is basically an overhead view of all the space around Magic Kingdom, and you'll see all the space over on the left there is currently undeveloped space. And now I'm going to layer on top of it this.
Now, real quick, before he kind of dives into this, and not to digress into Anaheim too much, but there's been a lot of talk, we've talked about it, where Disney California Adventure might get a name change and hence a theme change. Maybe it'll be Disney's Cinematic Adventure, right? Mm-hmm. I'm telling you, Disney, if you go that route and you make it Disney Cinematic Adventure, that Simba lot, which is now, 25, 30 acres, I would seriously consider putting Villains Land there, because DCA is the place to be when it comes to Halloween. Oogie Boogie Bash is incredibly popular. Mm-hmm. That's the place to go. At Disneyland Resort, that's what people think of DCA. A Villains Land would absolutely crush. And the way they can incorporate that into any kind of Oogie Boogie Bash kind of event would be absolutely insane. So I'm telling you, Disney, if you change DCA's theme, you might want to do Villains Land, just saying.
Red sort of area. This is what's referred to as the Stormwater Master Plan. You'll notice it includes all of Magic Kingdom. So all of Magic Kingdom and the surrounding area, all of that space is basically denoted as the Stormwater Master Plan that they're working towards. And the documentation around the Stormwater Master Plan area states that the application requests approval for the master concept plan and authorization to construct the first phase of the proposed master concept plan as described previously and related improvements within the basin. But now I want to layer on these orange lines here. So these orange lines are representative of what are referred to as the limits of construction. So this is the most formalized concrete elements of their plan in the near future. So everything they're going to be doing is going to be contained within the orange lines that I have mapped out here, or the red area as well. And now I'm going to lay down this sort of yellow block here. And what that block represents, you'll see it's taking up a portion of that orange space. That represents what they refer to as a gravel laydown area. And basically that is a space where they're going to be putting gravel down and then dumping all of the excavation, moving all of the land. And that's where they're going to be putting it while they're doing all the construction in these spaces. So every bit of land, everything that they're needing to excavate, rocks and everything they're moving out of these spaces, trees, bushes, everything that's going out is going to be put in this gravel laid down area. So that is not going to be used to build new sections of the park. That is going to be used as this sort of dumping ground, if you will, for lack of a better word. But now I want to throw down the blue line that's included in this plan. This blue line represents the total study area for this master plan, for this document. So all the work that they're doing, all the investigation, all of the study that they've done, and looking at the water and the recesses and how it runs off and all the things that they're going to be doing there and measuring the thickness of the moss and all that stuff is contained in this massive, giant blue study area. This is absolutely enormous. And so what's really exciting about this is they wouldn't be looking at all of these areas in this study if they weren't thinking about doing something with the space. Now, to be clear, I said the orange lines is where the initial construction, the concrete things that they're planning on working on and moving things around at, that's the orange lines. But what's exciting is these blue lines is a massive amount of space. In fact, over there on the left side of the image there, that's over 700 acres of space in this study area. 700 acres. Magic Kingdom itself is only 107 acres total, just for Magic Kingdom.
Wow.
107 acres total. All of the areas of Universal Studios, Islands of Adventure, and all their hotels in Volcano Bay is only about 700 acres. So that gives you just a taste of how big this space is. So they are clearly gearing up for something. When that will be, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years away, we don't know. But I feel like...
And okay, let's just say hypothetical. I like where his head is at with this stuff, you know? Mm-hmm. If they build a park there, hypothetically, right? Like the 5th park goes there. That's prime real estate at Walt Disney World because you're right next to the most visited theme park on the planet, Magic Kingdom. Mm-hmm. That is huge, man. Oh my!
Well, and here's the thing, and obviously, oh, sorry, really quick. I was just going to say, and really quick, I've been following Walt Disney World for many years, knowing how much acreage they have, but you never really know like where the big chunks are at until I actually watched Noble's video to actually see 700 acres literally neighboring Magic Kingdom. That just kind of like blew me away.
You can literally build multiple parks in that spot. I mean, like you said, Magic Kingdom's only 107, which surprises me because Disneyland isn't too far behind acreage-wise in Magic Kingdom, if that's the case. Yeah. I think Disneyland's like 95 or something. I don't think it's that far behind that. I mean, that's interesting. I thought it was bigger than that, but I guess not. That's wild.
Like this study that they're doing, this work on the master plan is really exciting now because there's so much space there. So looking at all that space, why would they be looking at it? Clearly, there's something massive that they're thinking about for that. Could it be a 5th park? I mean, this could easily turn into a 5th park. Can you imagine a side-by-side 5th park, Magic Kingdom, and a 5th park right next door, plenty of space for huge levels of parking in that area, hotels, surrounding space, lots of easy routes to get into that area. It's just a natural extension over there, sort of by Grand Floridian and Polynesian. They're already doing a lot of work on the roads over there anyway. There's also sort of a backdoor entrance area back there from the Windermere neighborhoods. I think it could be really cool. Can you imagine sort of two side by side? Maybe they're connected in some way. Again, taking a page from Universal's playbook when you think about Universal Studios and Islands of Adventure that are sort of connected to each other in this huge city walk.
But it's not even just Universal though. It's also kind of borrowing from the Disneyland and California Adventure kind of dynamic. You know, that's one thing that I think a lot of Floridians really enjoy about coming to Anaheim is how close our parks are. You know, where you can just walk from one to the other and stuff. I mean, you know, obviously this is going to be a lot more walking, but if they're side by side like that, that does change the game because it's a lot less drama with travel and transportation. Oh, that's wild, man. This is absolutely crazy to think about.
Escape that all sort of does that. They could easily build that right here in this space. Again, this part I'm talking about, this is all speculation, all wild speculation, but it is really interesting given how large that space is there and that it is part of the study. Again, they're just looking at water runoffs and storm plans and things like that. But there's a reason why it's included in this study. So I'm very curious to see what they're going to do. But it's getting me a bit excited. So now let's get back to reality and let's zoom in really now on the space that we.
Especially because with Florida, the water level is so high. So they have to look at the water levels of if certain parts of land could be active for construction, for development, for drainage, as what it says in the plan. So the fact that they have added that space into that, as Noble had mentioned, that is very telling that they are possibly looking at future development. Now, as he said, could it be a fifth park down the road? It could be. It could be more hotels. It could be anything, really. It could be a second. It could be basically a Disney World resort inside the Disney World resort.
Well, it would likely be if they really want. If they. This is a huge, asterisk basically. If they can even if the land is even usable, because that's why they're doing the study. I'm assuming, right, to see if they can even build on it. But let's just assume they can build on all 700 acres. They could have a theme park. They could have hotel components to this. I mean, like you said, you can build a little resort there. I mean, 700 acres is huge. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you can do a lot with it. I mean, you could build 2 parks there if you really wanted to, and hotels.
Yeah.
Absolutely insane.
And still have room left over.
Yeah, exactly.
About for sure that they're going to be doing construction on in the near future. So again, now that we're zoomed in, just to reorient you, I'm going to throw up the red master plan. You can see it takes up a lot of the space there. So that's the red sort of stormwater master plan area. And then I'm going to throw the limits of construction lines back up. So this orange line, again, those are the major pieces that we're thinking about for Villains Land and Cars Land and all those spaces. So first, I'm going to throw on the Cars Land. So we're going to throw that up there. We're not going to talk too much about Cars Land because we've talked about that in other videos, but this is where the Cars Land is going to be reserved for. It's going to fill in those sort of orange lines there. Again, as I said, it's orange lines or the red space. It's going to fill in that sort of central area, filling in Rivers of America and Tom Sawyer Island. And then directly on top of that is where we get this sort of, I'm going to put this purple space up here because that's basically Villains Land. It's going to be the entrance into the Villains Land. And now that we're oriented, let me remove the orange line so we can see a little bit better. You can see Villains Land is pretty good size. But you'll notice that I've broken it into a couple of interesting areas that you're thinking, where'd you get all this stuff from? Let me cook here. So Villains Land Phase 1 is what we know about. That's the concept art. That's what's been shown to us. So that's that first space there. But there's a space directly to the side of it that I believe that they are reserving for a Villains Land Phase 2 that's going to be directly connected to it. So we're reserving additional space. Depending on how well the Villains Land does, they're reserving that as an expansion.
Let me ask you a question, George. Now, I love Villains Land. I love the concept. And this is speculation, obviously,
Right. Correct.
Is this too much villains, though? If this goes through, let's just say hypothetical, we have Phase 1, which is a pretty significant land in and of itself. Then you got Phase 2, which is basically doubling size of Villains Land, and you're going to throw a Villains Hotel. Is this too much for Magic Kingdom villains?
I think, well, here's the thing. I could say yes now, which in a way, kind of, but then it's like if Disney actually did do it and they showed us what phase 2 would be, I'd be jumping up giddy like a schoolgirl, you know, but asking me this now, I think it's a little bit overkill, especially because like how much really could you get out of putting it in the park. Now, if they would have done this, if they were to do another park adjacent to Magic Kingdom, that's what I would have done with the villains, because you have the light and the dark.
Right. Yes. If you made a villains park in the area where he was talking about with the 700 acres, a whole villains park, and you had the villains hotel component to that, woo, that's a moneymaker right there. But as part of an existing park, I don't know. I think it's a little too much villains. I mean, I love villains and I love what they want to do with villains, but there is such thing as too much of a good thing. And I think
what I would have done, actually, now thinking about what if I was to go just buy off of Noble's kind of graph here,
right?
Really, honestly, where the phase 1 is,
okay.
I actually would have done an extension to Fantasyland. And then where the Villains Land phase 2, I would put the phase 1.
Right.
And then still have the hotel connected to the land.
I think that would be good. Yeah. Well, that ship kind of sailed, unfortunately, because, they're doing it the way they're doing it. But you're right. That would work. That would work really well. Yeah. I don't know. Look, and like you said, if they do this, and we see what they want to do with it, I might be all on board. You know what I'm saying? I just, at face value, as much as I love villains and what they want to do with the phase 1, I just think this might be a little too much villains,
Right.
But we'll see.
And as I said, if they did a phase 2 and they created an oversized like Cave of Wonders and like a built-in elephant graveyard or something, I'd be like, what the hell was I saying? Yeah, let's go for it.
Let's do it.
Pad for villains. So a phase 2, similar to Dark Universe. Dark Universe is launching, but there's also an expansion pad for Dark Universe, which we've talked about in some of my other videos. If you haven't seen those, I'll link to them below. You're going to want to check them out. Lots of great details about Dark Universe over at Epic Universe. So I do believe that they're holding that expansion pad aside for a phase 2 for Villains Land. But you might also see a Villains Hotel that's also listed on this screen here.
Yep.
Because I believe they are going to be doing a hotel at some point in the future that is quote unquote sort of an in-park hotel, most likely going to be themed around villains. There is a ton of space right there that you can easily plant a villains hotel there that'll be in park, overlooking the park. It may seem crazy, but I'm telling you, I think we're going to get it. Now I'm going to go a little bit further out there now, and you're going to add this green space in here, because the green space is what I'm thinking is going to be some sort of potential fantasy type hotel or storybook like hotel. So like a Fantasy Springs from Tokyo Sea Hotel, which is an in-park hotel in Tokyo Sea called Fantasy Springs, basically overlooks the park. Again, sort of connected there over by Fantasyland. So some sort of like fantasy hotel here, the Light Side Hotel, an direct entrance into Fantasyland. You've got the Villains Hotel and direct entrance into Villains Land. This makes a ton of sense because Epic Universe is doing in-park hotels with the Helios Grand.
Yeah,
you got Disneyland in California.
Okay, so I'm going to kind of play devil's advocate on that notion kind of either way. I do love that idea that there is like a fantasy hotel connected into Fantasyland, a villains hotel connected to Villains Land. I like that concept of where he's going with.
Right.
However, with that prime real estate, the difference is when Tokyo Disney built the Fantasy Springs Hotel, they had the Fantasy Springs land attached with it. So it was a new hotel attached with a new land.
With new land, okay.
If they were to put a new hotel connected to Fantasyland with nothing new added to it, there's nothing really too enticing to say, oh yeah, I want to walk into Fantasyland with something that was built over 10 years ago. Well, I think that they should actually update the Fantasyland first, before attaching a hotel.
Well said. Yes, and I would. Yes, as a Californian, as a Disneyland snob, the Fantasyland and Magic Kingdom totally sucks. I mean, well, I shouldn't say that. Half of it sucks. The new Fantasyland stuff is amazing. I love Seven Dwarfs Mine Train. It looks great. It's a great attraction. The area looks fun. The old Fantasyland is like trapped in like the 50s and 60s. I mean, it looks like the Fantasyland we had when Disneyland opened in 55. You know, that medieval kind of cheap. You know, yeah, I agree with you, George. I would bring the rest of Fantasyland up to par, and then let's talk about a hotel. Because if you just plop the hotel into an old land, you're right. Then why are people going to spend the money for that? You know, so that's interesting. Absolutely.
California Adventure that sort of have in-park hotels that connect directly into the hotel or into the parks. From what I'm speculating, I think they're going to be adding a hotel or two in that space as sort of an overlook.
Is this Vegas? No, I was kidding. No, just all kidding aside. No, it reminds me very much. This Helios Universal Hotel reminds me very much of Vegas. You know what I'm saying? It has that kind of like energy to it. Yeah, the Bellagio, Caesar's Palace, you know, that kind of vibe for sure. Not what I was expecting with this hotel at all.
Looking into the park, direct access into the park, it makes total sense. They'd be crazy if they don't do this. Now, overall acreage wise, the phase 1 Villains Land is about 12 to 14 acres or so, give or take, which is about the same acreage. I think Disney's Galaxy's Edge in Hollywood Studios is about 14 acres. So it's about the same size as Galaxy's Edge there for the Villains Land.
And to put it in perspective, Bob Iger's backyard is about 14 acres. So just, you know, so you can kind of picture how big this really is.
Of course.
Phase 1.
Because we've been there
now
a time
let's
or
dig
two.
a little bit deeper.
Oh, we've been there, bro. Yeah, exactly. Dude, we're there all the time, dude. Come on. You know us, you know.
Into the Villains Land itself and the potential layout that we're going to see for Villains Land Phase 1. So right there, you've got an entrance near Haunted Mansion. You can kind of see almost like a walkway that goes from Haunted Mansion over to Frontierland over by Big Thunder Mountain. Then you've got that entrance that sort of serpentines through the center of Villains Land and then goes over sort of.
I gotta say, man, the serpentines. I've never heard that before, but I like that.
You like it, yeah. Because I noticed it too when I started watching his video. I'm like, I like that
serpentines.
Kind of like this, yeah. Now I do have to say something though too, because his ideas are very telling though, because when Disney did say that this is going to be the largest expansion in Magic Kingdom history. Now, there obviously with the controversy behind Tom Sawyer Island and Rivers of America, whether you agree that it should go or should not go, I do have to kind of give just a little bit of a pushback that when Disney says this is going to be the biggest expansion in Magic Kingdom history, but technically, even though there's really nothing going on with the river, that is still technically part of the park. So you're still kind of replacing that. So you can't really call that an expansion because you're supposed to be expanding beyond that.
I agree with you, but Disney sees it differently. I don't know what it
makes me wonder though. They're saying that it's going to be the biggest expansion. What if the expansion part is really maybe not it may or may not be villains, but where it shows the phase 2,
right?
That might be the expansion.
It could be,
and where the Villains Hotel is and the Fantasy Springs Hotel. You know, this is his speculation, but that might be all prime real estate for the park itself.
It could be. No, absolutely. Like he said, he's speculating, you know, but it could be that Fantasy Springs Hotel area that he has in green could be a new land, you know, for all we know, you know? So yeah. They definitely have plans to expand out beyond what they currently have with Villains Land and everything. So at the end of the day, it will be an expansion. But you're right. Right now, it's kind of like replacing, right? So interesting.
To the right side, leading over by the train. When you first enter in on the left there, you're going to see some sort of shops or potentially restaurant area over there, as well as maybe the splash pads that I was talking about. Over on the right side of your entrance, additional shopping and things, the sort of little town that you see in the concept art. Directly towards the back and over towards the left is the Villains roller coaster that we talked about. In the center there, you're probably going to see that cavernous area. We'll see how that comes to life. It's probably going to be maybe like a bridging point between Cars Land and Villains Land there, with sort of a dual entrance that goes around. And back there by the roller coaster will be sort of the marquee Maleficent's castle and dragon experience there. And then as you sort of arc over to the right, you can see the train station there, and then also the space for the dark ride. So that's what I'm expecting for the overall layout of Villains Land. Well, as we learn more, we will adjust this accordingly. But based on the concept art, based on the permits that have been filed, the stormwater master plan, all the acreage, the layout, where we've been told Beyond Thunder Mountain area, it's going to be back there Beyond Thunder Mountain. I feel like this is going to be the right space here, sort of the right layout. And overall, I'm pretty excited about it. Now, in my last video, I said how I was really not that excited about Villains Land because, I mean, I was excited in theory, but not in what was shown because it felt very blue sky. I still think it's very blue sky. I don't think they have 100% concrete plans for what they're going to do in that space, the layout per se. But I am encouraged.
And that's why I'm kind of a little like with the giant dragon. That could go either way. It could be symbolic where it's showing a Maleficent thing is going here. Or it could be literal where we're literally getting, the dragon, so
exactly.
Yeah, he's right. It's very vague. So I'm very curious to see how it all shakes out. But the energy and the aesthetics, though, Disney, you got to keep that. You got to keep the vibe and the look of it. You can change the details and whatever here and there, but you need to keep the overall style and vibe that you have with this art in the final product. I mean, you nailed it with the art in terms of the vibe and the aesthetics.
By these permits that have been filed and sort of breaking down the numbers and seeing all the big things that they potentially have planned, that they are moving and that they are doing some work.
And the cool thing with Villains Land too is at night you can have like shadows of like the hyenas or
basically Villains Grove on steroids.
The whole park. You could do the whole park.
The whole, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, not the whole park. I'm sorry, the whole land. I mean, you can projection map stuff like shadows and crazy stuff all over these buildings and rock work. I mean, that land at night could be incredible, dude. I mean, look what they've done with Villains Grove. Imagine 14 acres of doing that. I mean, absolutely insane, bro.
They're definitely not moving land around right now. I haven't seen any bulldozers or land movers yet, but they're definitely thinking about it. They've got some lines drawn. They've got some space reserved. Still, the jury is out on whether or not Cars Land actually ends up where it ends up, or if it ends up somewhere else. Because, like I said, that's space for the Villains Hotel. They may end up using that for Cars Land as well. They could use that for that space because there's been so much backlash on Rivers of America and Tom Sawyer going away. But overall,
here's the thing. He's right. There has been a lot of backlash, but the thing is, the backlash has been from our circle. The nerd bubble.
Correct.
I don't know where the normies' heads are at. And I don't know if the normies care enough. And I know a lot of super fans in our community, you don't want to hear that, but it's the reality. The normies and what we think, completely different situation. Yeah. If you were to poll these normies, do you want this river to stay or do you want some new car thing for your kids? What do you think the normies are going to say? So, yes, I agree with him. There's been a lot of backlash in our circle.
Yeah.
But the normies, I don't know if they're there with us with that. You know what I'm saying? So
exactly.
I'm not sure if it's going to move the needle for Disney, but we'll see. They might.
And I do think that whatever the final concept is for Cars and where it's going to be placed and where Villains is going to be placed, because he does make a point. If Disney can make the decision to reroute anything at any time. Right. So with all that land available, they could tweak it. But I feel like that we'll get a not even just a Villains Land, but I feel like even Cars 2 where we'll get a Beyond Big Thunder model at the next D23.
Yeah, hope so. Absolutely hope so.
I'm a little bit encouraged. I mean, I'm sad to think this is probably 10 years away before we actually get it, but it is kind of exciting to me now that I've kind of been breaking it all down. I don't know. I hope we get it soon, because if we don't get it, if it takes 10 years.
Okay, no, wait. Now he says 10 years, but now did Damara, when he said 5 years, was he referring to everything?
I was under the impression when Damara said all that we shared today will be done by the end of the 5th year. What Noble might be referring to is this extra stuff that he's talking about and speculating that's 10 years out.
Okay.
I think that's what it is. Now, I do want to touch upon this too. We do have a Cheshire Cat component to the Villain's Grove.
Mm-hmm.
That would be an interesting sort of area too for a Villain's Land, like a Twisted Wonderland almost.
That's interesting.
I would love that. Look, there's so much potential with this theme. You know what I'm saying? And that's, I'm telling you, man, I can go on for days.
Deliver Disney Villains Land. I think Disney's done. I think that's it. Universal's they're just gonna run away with it, to be honest. If they can get it out quick, and if it resembles the concept art at all, I think it's gonna keep them in the game. And I think it's great because they're gonna continue to push Universal to be better. Universal's gonna continue to push Disney to be better, and we're all winners in that game, because no matter who is on top, we're the winners as the consumers of this stuff, because it is a lot of fun and it's exciting. So anyhow, that's all I've got for us today. I've got some more videos coming out. Be sure to check back.
So the Noble Way, they're friends of the channel, 100%. We did a live show with them a couple months ago. I can't recommend them enough. Make sure you go check them out on YouTube. If you're not subscribed to them, make sure you do that. Make sure you sub to them. They do a lot of great content, very similar to ours. A lot of speculation, breakdown, as you can see from the video today. So we'll see. We will absolutely see. Now, I will have to push back a little bit on his last comment saying if they can do the Villains Land thing, Disney is still in the game. This is sort of a fan versus, like, what I'm trying to say is that this is another thing, like an example of like the fan circle, you know, that we are like in this fan circle and we hear stuff from fellow diehard fans and we start to kind of like take it as like objective fact. Reality is, though, as much as we hear from our community how Disney's on their heels and like how Universal is really just like, you know, just surpassing Disney at this point and yada, 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 we saw those 2023 numbers, those theme park attendance numbers, and that's not the same. Those numbers don't correlate with the fan conversations on Twitter and stuff. Disney is still very much number one, very much. I mean, to put it in perspective, Islands of Adventure, which is arguably Universal's best park, is tied with DCA. So Disney is very much the king. Now, you want to stay there, obviously, but do they need Villains Land to be a hit,
successful,
to stay in the game? I don't think we're there. I think they're in the game. Absolutely. Whether Villains Land is mid or not, you know, in my opinion. But anyway, fantastic video from the Noble Way. Like I said, make sure you subscribe to him, and they do great work over there. Absolutely great work. But George, any final thoughts before we skedaddle?
I think honestly his video was great, and as I said, as you said, can't recommend them enough. I mean, they do great work. Very interesting video. As I said, I checked it out, and that's why I brought it to your attention, because I thought this is a really interesting topic to discuss. It is. I'm glad you brought it to my attention. And shout out to our friend Slimer. We got Slimer. We love Slimer. Family here on OG55. But shout out to Slimer because he's actually the guy. He actually brought the Noble Way to our attention initially. I was not familiar or aware of them, and it was Slimer who really brought to our attention. So big shout out to Slimer, and thank you, Slimer, for doing that, because they do make great content. But but George, if you could let everybody at home know where they could find you on social media, sir. Absolutely. You can find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Disney George. You could also find me on Instagram under the Disney Italiano. And of course, you can find me right here on my home base at Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner, with all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info.
Yes, sir. Holy cannoli. Go and follow this man on social media. And he said sticky. And you know what happens when he says sticky? There There we go. Thank you all so much for watching this episode of OG55. Comment down below with all your opinions and thoughts on the fifth park, on Villains Land, the hotels, everything we talked about and speculated about today. We would love to hear from you. If you are not a member, please consider becoming a member, because we do release content early to members. A lot of content is released early to members, and we have exclusive member only content. It's pretty cool. If you can do it, if you can wing it, I think you guys and gals will really enjoy it. And we appreciate every single person who watches our videos, shares our videos, comments, whether you're a member, whether you're not a member. We just appreciate all the support over the years from everyone here at OG55. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And we're going to close out this video like we always close out our videos with the beautiful, brilliant Youngjin of La Seraphim. Let's go.
세상이 누구에게나 공평하게 추악해.